All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'll give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakaha Kodash. A double honors unto the apostles and elders of JMS Great Millstone, and a sincere Shalom to Yakin bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. And as you see, the title of this lesson, it reads Esther, Obedience and Victory Through Counsel, right? Because a lot of times within the Christian church, certain women of the scriptures, they try to up them as if, the glory shall also work through men, because the flock of the Lord's pasture are men, right? He used forth those men in order to direct those women that the scriptures speak about, man, right? And the glory isn't even for those men. It's ultimately unto the Most High Yahweh and His Son Yahweh Shai. But nevertheless, I want to get into this because you see throughout the book of Esther, she wasn't moving upon her own will or upon her own agenda, so to speak, man. She was giving guidance and counsel throughout, all of her steps by her uncle Mordecai, man. She didn't come up with the plans in order to Yaquab Haman, and to get the king in that position. No, these things were directed to her from a man of understanding, from a man whom the Lord was dealing with, right? But it took her obedience, right, to also receive that victory, right, through counsel. So let's get into it. Is Esther 2, and I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna just hit the points, not to make this lesson too lengthy, but to hit the points, right? We understand that when we go back to Esther, the first chapter, it speaks about how Queen Vashti's position was taken. So ultimately, Queen Esther, she ended up getting the position of queen, being that Xerxes, found favor of her. Right now, this is an important precept right here that we can't skip over. Esther 2:10. It says Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background, and you'll see how that plays out. As the account unfolds. It says Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background. Why? Because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. So this was the first step in obedience, because we see as the result of what actually occurs to that demon Haman. It was part. A lot of it had to do with this not being revealed in the beginning, but in due time, right? So this is the first part of counsel. Mordecai directed her not to tell anyone that she was an Israelite, man. Right? That's important, because a decree was put out that Jake should be killed, man. Right? Through that demon Haman, him and his counsel, right? So you see counsel on both the right hand and the left hand when you read the book of Esther. Right? He speaks about his and I'll grab it, his wife Zeresh, and her friends, or him and his friends, right? Right, is Esther 5, and I'm gonna start here. Right, this is after um, Esther invited them to a feast, ultimately the king and Haman. Right, this is Esther 5:12, and it reads, and Haman added, and that's not all. Queen Esther invited only me and the king himself to the banquet she prepared for us, and she has invited me to dine with her and the king again tomorrow. But before this occurred, and I'm gonna jump back, oops, so I couldn't see it. I'm gonna read that again, but you didn't see it. It says, then Haman added, and that's not all. Queen Esther invited only me and the king himself to the banquet she prepared for us, and she has invited me to dine with her and the king again tomorrow. Right now, before we finish that, let's go to Esther, the fourth chapter, right? Because he gave forth Esther a message, Mordecai did, right? Because there was that letter basically sent out, basically stating that Jake was going to be killed, right? because Mordecai didn't bow down unto Haman, that demon Haman, right? This is the Agagite. This is Esther 3 and 5. Who I'm gonna start for? Here we go. In fact, I'm gonna start at the top. It says sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" They spoke to him day after day, but he still refused to comply with the order, right? So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. And that's how Edomites get down, man. Hey, understanding who Haman is today, right? Says he learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes, right? This is the Medo-Persian Empire, man, or the Persian Empire. So there it is. He wanted to find a way to destroy all of Jake, right? So when you continue to read down, and we go back to that 5th chapter, here it speaks about matter of fact, we can go back to this is 5. I'm gonna go to verse chapter 4. Right, so that letter basically went out to the kingdom saying that Jake was to be killed in the 3rd chapter. Now this is 8. It says Mordecai gave Hatak, which he was set forth to basically be a help unto Esther, anything that she needed. He was a part of like the king's group in order to directly work with Esther. Says gave a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews, right, which Haman had written up, and signed and sealed by the king's ring. Says he had asked Hatak to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hatak to direct direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and pleas for her people, right? So basically, Mordecai gave another counsel of what she had to do in order to beg for mercy and plead for her people, right? And this basically, Hatak is the middleman going from Mordecai to Esther and Esther back to Mordecai, right? But she's getting counsel through this man, right? And let's grab a precept from this. This is Ecclesiastes 4, and I'll start here at the point here is in 12. It says, and if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken, right? Because ultimately, in both of these, both of our foreparents, right, of the nation of Israel being in unison, in the spirit and in mind to complete this task. Guess what? A victory for Israel came out of it, right? Now to go back here to the book of Esther, the 4th chapter. So like 4:9, it says, so Hatak returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. As a matter of fact, I have another precept. This is Proverbs 11 and 14, and it reads, where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. And you're going to see why that counsel, didn't allow them to fall. it was ultimately through the plans that Yahweh Shem Shah put upon Mordecai's mind for Esther to execute. You know, she was in the house of the king, you know, so she had a say so. You know, the scriptures speak about how he was willing to give her half of the kingdom in which he was reigning in because he favored her that much. So it took the execution. You know, he had the blueprint. She had to be the one to actually, you know, have the plans built out. And you see that. So in that multitude of his counsel, there was a plan that created forth safety and ultimately deliverance, right? So to go back here in the book of Esther 4 and 9, it says, so Hatak returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Then Esther told Hatak to go back, to go back and relay this message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days, right? So Hatak gave Esther message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all other Jews are killed. Basically saying, lock in, man. You know, the message was to kill all of us. You are not an exception. So don't think that just because you're in the king of the palace, that you're exempt from this. So he's you know giving her the skinny man, giving her the real. If you keep quiet, and this is our book, you know, so you gotta throw the Jake flavor in there, man, right? He learned no, hey, don't think that you off the hook. They find out who you are, hey, they're gonna get you too. Says if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance, and this is the NLT by the way, Salaki. This is the NLT. Says if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. The Lord is going to make a way for Jake to, you know, be delivered in some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Meaning what? Hey, that's your fate. It says, who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this, right? And that was the time. Much like how Joseph was made forth a ruler in the time of Egypt, you know, for the for the time period of a famine, of that dearth, right? For who? His family to be ushered into Egypt for them to eat. Well, this is the same account. The Lord put her in this particular position. So what? So that Israel wouldn't be completely killed off, right? Now, I'm read 4 down to you know, she basically asked for strength and fasting. After this, I want to go into the 5th chapter. Where it talks about how she entered into the court of the king, basically saying that she had a banquet prepared for them, which she used subtlety, man, right? She Yaiquab the king and Haman, right, in order to ultimately get what she wanted, right? So to go back to Esther 5, right, in 12, which we hit earlier, it says, then Haman added, and that's not all. Queen Esther invited only me and the king himself to the banquet she prepared for us. She has invited me to dine with her and the king again tomorrow. Then he added, but this is all worth nothing as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting there at the palace gate. So Haman's wife Zeresh and all his friends suggested set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall, and in the morning, ask the king to impale Mordecai on it. When this is done, you can go on your merry way to the banquet with the king. This pleased Haman, and he ordered the pole set up. So, hey, this is wicked counsel, right? This Psalm 71 and 10, it says, for mine enemies speak against me, and they that lay wait for my soul take counsel together, saying, Yahweh hath forsaken him, persecute and take him, for there is none to deliver him. right? So here it is. They conspired against Mordecai and Jake and the Israelites, man, right? And conspire means what? Con meaning together. Spire or spire means to breathe, right? So they came together and thought of ways in which Jake or our people could be destroyed, man, right? So it's saying Yahweh hath forsaken him, persecute and take him. How much more in the times that we're into now? Understanding that persecution has to come again. It says, oh Yahweh, be not far from me, oh my power, make haste for my help. Let them be confounded and consumed that are adversaries to my soul. Let them be covered with reproach and dishonor that seek my hurt. And that's exactly what we're about to read, right? The same ones, as the scripture says, it shall return upon their own pate. This is coming from the book of Psalm 7 and 16. It says, his mischief shall return upon his own head. It's like I'm going to start at 15. It says, he made a pit and digged it and is falling into the ditch which he made. His mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. Same way he tried to trap us up. And Yahweh Shemashah is going to give him that same judgment, right? But it took both parties, you know. Now, I'm going to get to the point in this Esther 7. And here it reads, I'm going to start here at 2. So I'm going to start at the top. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. On the second occasion, while they were drinking wine, and this is the NLT, by the way, it says the king again said to Esther, tell me what you want. Queen Esther, what is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom. It says, Queen Esther replied, if I found favor with the king, and if it pleases to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. Now, why is this important? Because she's now revealing what nation she comes from. Just as Mordecai told her, don't say anything, don't let them know you're an Israelite. Now's her time to allow it to be known, because this request, Xerxes said it was going to be granted, right? So now she's laying upon him and showing that the same man who conspired to kill her people, hey, well, she's included within that. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for that would be too trivial a matter to warrant disturbing the king. And who would do such a thing? King Xerxes demanded. Who would be so presumptuous as to touch you? Right? Because he loved her. He found favor in her. Esther replied, this wicked Haman is our adversary and our enemy. Haman grew pale with fright before the king and queen. Right? Because now he didn't know she was an Israelite. So he like, oh shit, like, right? You know how he get down. It says, then the king jumped to his feet in a rage and went out into the palace garden. Haman, however, stayed behind to plead for his life with Queen Esther, for he knew that the king intended to kill him. In despair, he fell on the couch where Queen Esther was reclining, just as the king was returning from the palace garden. The king exclaimed, will he even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very eyes? As soon as the king spoke, his attendants covered Haman's face, signaling his doom. Then Harbana, one of the king's eunuchs, said, Haman has set up a sharpened pole, right? Because here it was, he conspired against Israel and Mordecai. And as the scripture speaks about, you know, the intent of the heart, it will, he set forth plans, you know, in order to complete that action, right? It says Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. He intended to use it to impale Mordecai, the man who saved the king from assassination. And you read this account, you know, I'm not going to give all the, you know, the gems of it. You know, you go out and you read it, man. You read it for yourself. It's a beautiful account, right? 16 chapters. The rest of it is in the Apocrypha, right? From 6 chapters in the Apocrypha, 10 in the you know, the regular sword, man. It says, then impale Haman on it, the king ordered. So I'm read again. It Says he intended to use it to impale Mordecai, the man who saved the king from assassination. Then impale Haman on it, the king ordered. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai, and the king's anger subsided. Got another precept. I'm going to close out with this. Psalms 33 and 10. And it reads, the Lord bringeth the counsel of the heathen to naught. He maketh the device of the people of none effect. The counsel of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai standeth forever, the thoughts of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose power is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai looketh from heaven, and he beholdeth all the sons of men. Right? I'm going to read down. It says, there is no king saved by the multitude of a host. A mighty man is not delivered by much strength. A horse is a vain thing for safety, neither shall he deliver any by his great strength. Behold, the eye of the Lord is upon him that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy. And that's the point, man. Right? So all the praise is given unto ultimately Yahweh Shemel Shai, because he directed this film, we're just the actors playing in the Lord's movie, but it takes obedience, right? It takes obedience. So that's the point, man. Of the lesson of Esther, the book of Esther, the account is a lesson of obedience and victory through counsel, right? And you see both the left-hand counsel and what they conspired to do in the right-hand counsel, ultimately being guided by the Lord. And who won? The right hand. Just like the right hand is going to win in this time, those whom Yahweh Shemal Shai is destined to save. So that's pretty much the point, not going, too lengthy, just hitting all the important portions within the topic to this lesson. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying into the body. I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah HaKodash. A double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to you, I can bring out this word in diligence and in truth. Shalom.